Jesus really is this massive course correction to the Pharisees' understanding of this passage of what does it mean for God to be both gracious and just? What does it mean that he is slow to anger, but he does not leave the guilty unpunished? This is clearly something that when we look at the era Jesus walked into and we look at the Old Testament, that they went back to over and over, that this was central to their understanding of who God was. Well, welcome everybody to another week of the Western Heights Community Podcast. This is a special one. We are missing somebody, but we've traded one people for two. We have a couple of special guests with us this morning. My name is Terrance Cottle, and I'm the youth and family minister here. I'm joined by our preacher, Mitch Wiggins, and as well as two lovely ladies in our church who are going to tell us a little bit about the retreat now 2 weekends ago. And why don't you guys just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got involved with Western Heights? And we'll start with Carol.
Okay, I am Carol Keene. I have been involved with Western Heights for 40 years, which is so hard to believe. Pretty much married into that particular church. My husband, Don, his family, he is the third generation to attend there. So
Oh, wow.
his grandparents attended Walnut Street before it was Travis Street, before it was Western Heights. So
Wow.
Don
Wow.
has attended there his whole life, practically. And then I joined him when we got married. So
Carol, I know that Dawn is currently an elder.
yes.
I know that Dawn's dad was an elder.
Yes.
Was granddad?
Yes. My dad was granddad.
Wow.
My dad was also an elder.
Yeah, and then your dad. So like not just involved in church, like she has elders, families and elder connections. It's pretty impressive.
A lot. Yeah. But I did
But you still have stuck around.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in one particular church since Dad was in the military. So our experience was multiple congregations all over the country. So we were Church of Christ, but that can look different depending on where you are.
True.
And so yeah, Dad was an elder in a number of congregations. So that was different.
Yeah. So how long have your parents been coming here then?
Mine?
If you didn't, yeah.
They moved here 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So not quite
a long time.
Okay. Well, awesome. Lauren, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
I'm Lauren Copeland, and we started going to Western Heights back in 2020 because we moved from Midland.
Oh, wow.
To Van Alstyne, and
there was a little thing going on called COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes, COVID moved. COVID, all that. Nothing big. But yeah, so we started at Western Heights when people were having to wear masks. And so it was really weird.
Wow.
But we knew some people who were at Western Heights, and I had actually visited. I grew up in Bonham and we visited as a teen with my family.
So you guys have been coming 6 years, which is less than I would have guessed then, because y'all are very involved.
Yeah, I don't know. Patton is definitely more of a homebody. He would not mind me saying that. And I am an introvert, but I also know like the value of church family. And I've always been like of the opinion, if I'm not willing to do it, why would anyone else? So I don't know. It's always just made me like want to be involved in some way. Sometimes we're less involved, sometimes we're more involved, but
Well, and I should say for those listening who don't know, the Copelands are also one of our youth group parents. So, along with Mitch, of course, but so I get more FaceTime with you guys than maybe some other folks. So maybe my perception is a little skewed there. I feel like you're super involved, but I see you guys all the time.
We are. I mean, overall,
yeah,
I would think probably compared to a lot, we're probably heavily involved.
Well, and so you grew up in Bonham. So how long has your mom been coming here then?
She's been coming here. She probably started coming maybe a year after we did. Mm-hmm. It was around the same time.
That's interesting. So both of y'all, different stages of life, but both of y'all, when you came, started bringing your parents after, even though you grew up going to church. Because of your parents, you brought them to where you started going when you came here. which is a little bit inverted of the usual dynamic. Well, awesome. Yeah, we're excited to have you guys on with us. We're going to be talking the ladies retreat in a little bit. I did just want to ask everyone, because we kind of prompt on talking about our weekends. How was your Sunday or just your weekend? How was worship? How was before and after? How we started, was last week the first week of new classes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
So which ones did y'all go to then? Carol and I know which one Mitch was in. But.
Well, guess. Which one do you think I went to? Because Don's teaching one.
That's true. That's true. Well. Yes,
I'm teaching one.
That's boring. Yeah. So you definitely went to the other one. You said, I hear enough of this guy at home. I went to the other one.
Yeah.
No.
I like to be supportive of him. So yes, I did go to that one. But it was good.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It was very good. I went to Don's class, and it was...
Nope. So nobody was in the new song class. And Mitch, is that you and Neil, right?
Yeah, Neil and I. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what I mean,
I was in there, obviously.
And Neil.
And Neil.
At least.
At least. We had two of us.
Okay.
No, I'm excited about the new song class. Mitch, you and I have talked about the high schoolers joining every so often. Mm-hmm. I am excited for just a new song class in general. I think we could use expanding the rotation a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of the behind the scenes working and rationale for that class. It's not just get together and sing and learn new songs. We're talking about theology of singing. We're talking about even some practical aspects of how to follow some music or how to follow a worship leader. And then what it means to sing as a church. And so we're going to be diving into a lot of that. And part of that is really trying to address some either questions or concerns that have been brought up, and not directly, but indirectly address things or reframe questions and concerns into maybe a different conversation. So that's kind of the hope besides singing and learning new songs.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. For as long as we have LTC going on, Sundays are just long. So by the time I get home on Sunday, rarely do I remember the actual lesson from Sunday morning without going back and remembering it. So we'll dive in like we usually do every week to some of the sermon recap and reflections. Before we do, so 2 weeks ago now, you guys had the Ladies Holy Known retreat. And in case you didn't notice, Mitch and I have never been on a ladies retreat. And when I think of men's retreats, we always have to, it always has to be like called strength or fire or fueled. And it's in a cave and it's around a campfire and it's outside because we're men and we're all grizzled and tough and like the outdoors. So what is the vibe of the ladies retreat? Just what's the whole atmosphere of a women's retreat? I cannot wrap my brain around it.
I will say we did go on some of us went on like a hike.
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
We actually did intentionally find a place where we could be outside, knowing that the weather may or may not cooperate. But
right.
Yeah, we were out where we were in cabins and there was a lake and some of them
all
went
the same
on walk,
themes so
some
far.
Not. Huh?
I said all the same themes as a men's retreat so far.
Yeah, it's really not that different, I don't think. And it got loud and people had a lot of fun. So you might be surprised how it's probably not as different as you think.
So for those who I guess did not go or have not been to just these kind of retreats, what is I don't want to say just what is the purpose, but I guess you guys, Carol, you are kind of over our women's ministry, you're kind of leading it right now. But from what I understand, and so y'all correct me if I'm wrong, y'all kind of organized it, both kind of organized it, put it together. What is really the goal or the purpose of stuff like this? Just get away?
Lauren.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
Lauren, you get turn.
She's gonna pass that one to you.
I would say really it's to fellowship together. Like it's to learn. I mean, our focus was being wholly known, and we had 3 different sessions about different aspects of holiness. But it's really, I think, most about getting to know each other.
Okay.
You know, when you're in a church the size of ours, I mean, there's obviously bigger churches, but it can be very difficult to get to know people on a deeper level. And
Yeah.
I think that was probably our biggest or one of the main goals. Would you say that's correct, Carol?
But our women's ministry has a vision and goals, that are written
Okay.
out. They're, based off of the churches, but one of our big things, we haven't had a actual retreat probably in at least 12, 13 years. We've had some ladies' days, but we have not
Wow.
had a women's retreat in a very long time. And that's different. When you spend the night, and it's a 24/7 kind of a thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
builds relationships in a different way. So it was really important to us. I mean, we left 3 hours Saturday afternoon just to hang out, just to be together, just to talk I mean, and it was funny because some of our young moms were like, we're going to go take a nap. And they didn't because there was too much fun to be had. So, I think that for us this year, that was the most important part, was to develop some more relationships. And we had, um, 15-year-olds all the way up to
Yeah. Yeah.
70. I think we decided the oldest person was 76. So
Okay.
that's a great, I'm not telling who that was.
That's
There
what, don't
was
say who.
I didn't say who,
We will
but
all be in trouble.
and it was not me. I will say that. It was not me, but it was really fun to watch all that interaction between our different generations and, that kind of thing. It was really neat.
Yeah, I will say I was impressed to hear how many of our teenage girls were going
Mhm,
with their moms
mhm,
willingly to this.
mhm.
And Lauren, you know that the
Yeah.
the phase of life that y'all are in
As long as a
is
friend is
interesting.
going, they'll all like, as long as one other one is going, like, they're like,
Right.
"Okay, I'll go."
Yeah.
But they all went with, and knowing, moms were also going to be there. And it sounds, everything I heard was really positive. So I think that's awesome that y'all had such a mix of the ages. So it sounds like it kind of went as you expected, as you hoped from a fellowship standpoint. Um, are there any stories that you guys can share with Mitch and I? Is it all behind locked doors? Is it all closed and uh,
What
secret? You had to
happens
be
at the
there.
retreat stays at the
Yes, what
retreat
happens there
then.
stays there.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a few things we shouldn't share, but I will say Lauren and I got especially close because we did share a bed and a room.
Yes.
So, which is part of a retreat that can be kind of
Okay,
hard and weird.
Yeah,
I will
true.
scary if
admit,
Yeah,
it's like, someone you don't know well or, yeah.
yeah. So that's always to me kind of it's almost like you're worried about it before the retreat, and then it turns out to be like the best part because you got to hang out and talk
Talk
yes,
and,
until 1 AM and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that I was very tired, but it was all good because there was so much, the fellowship part just kept going. They played, everybody played games in the big event barn for till 11 at night. Well, then you go back to your house. Well, there's 8 ladies there that we had to talk to. And then we got in our room and then we had to talk. So it's like 1, 2 before
Yeah.
you
yeah,
do talk to everybody and have all your good conversations. So it was really cool. That was just really the most important part. The lessons were great. Lauren led one of our lessons. We had ladies leading lessons that it was not necessarily their um what they thought they were good at or what they were
okay,
comfortable with,
yeah,
but they stepped out and they did it, and I think that was huge for, a lot of our younger girls, and our all of our ladies were so encouraging to them, I feel like. I think Lauren probably
yeah.
experienced that some.
So
Yeah.
tell me real quickly on the theme. Like,
Mm.
how did you? Because I know part of the story, but just for those that don't know, like, how did you come up with a theme, and how did it relate to your classes or any of that in the whole retreat?
Well, I've always had the, I guess, dream vision of, the elders always give our church a theme for the year, a vision to something to focus on. And I've always thought we need to take that theme and not just talk about it in January, but it needs to become truly our focus. So that's probably one of my favorite things, was listening to your sermons get referred to because it connected with what we were focusing on. And then Sunday morning in Don's class, somebody mentioned, "Oh, we talked about this on the ladies' retreat." I'm like, all these connections we're making,
Yeah.
it's like our whole church is truly focused on becoming holy. And I think that's that's a cool thing to know we're all trying to accomplish that same goal and grow in that
Yeah.
same area. So
Yeah, just having everybody moving in the same direction is neat.
Yeah.
So, just a question on this. It seems like this year's theme is easier to do that with than maybe
Mm.
some other themes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Could see
reason I
that.
say that is I've seen it in our classes, and maybe it's just more excitement. Maybe we've articulated it better. I wish I knew what to put my finger on so that we could replicate it, but I'm not sure what it is. If it's a time of life that the church is, if it's this particular idea or what, but it feels like classes and women's retreat, and like I normally try to do my sermons with, hitting on different angles of the theme, but it feels like it's exponential growth. Would Do you have any thoughts as to why, or is it just an easier idea to kind of talk about holiness? What do you think?
I think he's talking to y'all.
I know.
He
That's
knows I have thoughts.
I don't know. My first thought is that kind of like when we went into the retreat, our 3 sessions ended up being about God's holiness, our own like holiness, and then holiness as a community.
Mm,
And and actually in my session we talked about how holiness is, it kind of encompasses all of God's attributes. And so I think maybe that's why it feels like there's almost more to talk about, because it kind of bleeds into everything else. Rather than it pulling out one specific thing, to focus on. It's almost like holiness kind of infiltrates everything, whether it's discipleship or, I'm trying to think of some of the others like we've focused on the last few years, but I feel like it goes into all of them.
And I think there's been an intentionality in using the word, focusing
Mhm.
on, and I
Yeah.
mean, to the point of sometimes I feel like people are, rolling their eyes. Oh, we're going to talk about holiness again, because I've already said in ladies' class, that's what I'd like to study in the fall,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yet, and I don't think they do. I think that's just me. But I do see this. There is an excitement when they see this connection we're making across all of our different classes and different things we're doing. So I think there's a big value in being intentional. I mean, if we're going to have a vision and a focus, being intentional about actually focusing on it and helping everybody see how it does connect and they are part of it. It's
yeah.
not just, the elders who came up with this idea.
Right.
It's all of us working together. So I think that's pretty important. And I think that's
And
maybe why it's different too.
and I'll even back up one. I noticed this whenever the elders, when we talked about it originally.
Mhm.
So I think I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but I'm not fully sure. I don't remember that typically what ends up happening is the elders kind of release the ministers to come up with the ideas. And usually whenever we bring up with something that's pretty well formulated, they kind of give their rubber stamp. And
Yeah.
then whenever we present it, uh, I let them present as much as possible. But really, it's originated from the
Right.
the ministers. This is one of those that this theme not only came from an idea first from an elder in a conversation we had,
Yeah.
but the elders wrap their minds around it faster than they ever have in
Mhm.
my 13 years of doing this with them. That
Mhm.
this is the first time that they got it and were running before any of the other presentations. And so that may be part of it, is that
Mhm.
already the elders were behind it and leading. Um, and that may be one of that magic sauce things that we can kind of put
Mhm.
our finger on, of saying, if the elders aren't in on it, then, that may not make it
Yeah.
as palatable for the whole
Right.
congregation.
Yeah, I remember I don't think we have brought this on air, so to speak, but you and I have talked about how you felt like this process was way more collaborative than sometimes, and that was not a statement like negatively about the past, but just that everybody seemed very bought in.
Yeah.
And I like what you pointed out, Carol, of just the idea that as weird as it may seem, if you did not grow up this way, and the idea of the church having an emphasis or a theme or what have you,
Mhm.
because I certainly didn't, and so I know that can feel unfamiliar to people. I love, as you pointed out, just the idea of everybody kind of pulling in the same direction. And that's not to say if we don't have one where that we're just scattered to the four winds, but more that like we're all thinking about it and like kind of meditating on it. We're aware of it. We're talking about it. And so it adds this almost connective tissue to everything that's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate y'all sharing with us a little bit. And of course, as we've done in the past, I'm excited that y'all get to stick around and aren't just kind of saying your piece and then bailing. But we're going to segue into talking about last week's sermon or Sunday's sermon. We continued holiness and motion, this time climbing, holiness and climbing, or this week I did a first. We've had the app, and Mitch, you've pointed out to me these sermon notes on the app before, but I actually pulled thoughts from the sermon notes in the app this week, and I was writing my own, and it never occurred to me to check the ones that you already put together for the app for those who use the app to do sermon notes. So I pulled this kind of icebreaker question because I love this. And I'd love to throw this around the horn if there's something that jumps out to you guys. But what is the highest place you've ever climbed or stood? What was special and what sticks with you about it? Mitch told us he's already been to the top of Kansas because he climbed on a coffee can at one point. But
That's
uh,
yeah.
we'll start with one of our guests. I guess this time I'll ask Lauren first since we started with Carol last time. But where's the highest place you've ever climbed or stood? What was special? What sticks with you about it?
I I honestly don't know what the highest place is. I mean, I've done a lot of hiking, skiing, so I've probably skied at higher elevation than this, but me, Patton, and Riley several years ago, she was pretty little, had gone to Taos, New
Oh yeah,
Mexico,
yeah.
and ended up I told Patton, "Hey, there's a 2-mile moderate hike. It looks great. There's a lake at the
I love
top.
this
It's gonna
story.
be great, like, at the top of this mountain."
How old was Riley?
And she was probably 8, 8 or
Okay.
9, would be my guess. We have a picture somewhere in our living room, but, um, and Patton laughs because, like, you drive up to Taos Ski Village and then, like, up another, like, 2,000 feet to even get to the start of this hike. So it
Okay.
started at probably 9 or 10,000 feet, I forget, and then
Okay.
it was 2 miles, like, up, like,
Up.
straight up, and it was the best hike, like, I loved it, but Pat was like, "Lauren, like, what why did you get start this hike? Like, it's the elevation." I was like, "It said it was moderate." It was worth it, though. The lake at the top was gorgeous, so,
Yeah. It's worth the view is worth the climb, right?
yeah.
Carol, is there a memory or something that jumps out to you? Have you guys traveled the world?
Well, I wouldn't say the world. Of course, the immediate ones were the Rocky Mountains because we've spent a lot
Oh,
of time
wow.
up
Okay.
there. Um, but we got to go to Norway last year, and so that was a whole different
Holy cow.
type
Yeah.
of mountainish type places because they
Yeah.
have the fjords and all of that stuff. So those two came to my mind, but both places because in Norway there was this huge waterfall, like incredible waterfall, almost like a surround sound one. It was pretty crazy. And I think what always amazes me is you go on these hikes or you take, it was a bus ride and then up some different steps and stuff. And you're really in a remote, like very few people see this place. Yet
Huh.
there is so much beauty. The detail God put into the most remote places. It's like,
Hmm.
why? It doesn't have to be pretty here. I mean, who's going to see this? But
Right.
just all of those kinds of things always just amaze me. And yeah, that's some of my favorite things is finding things in nature where it's like, he didn't have to do that, but he did because somebody might come by and enjoy it, see it, need
Yeah.
that. So I don't know. That's what I always think of as far as when you're
Oh, yeah.
in those high places. I mean, you do feel closer to God in a lot of ways, just because he
100%.
was the one who put his fingerprint right there.
Well, there's something about the view and just, I guess, how small everything looks the
Oh.
further up you get. I remember this
Mhm.
the first time I got in a plane. I remember this the first time, Mitch, as you mentioned, that I was like in a skyscraper, looking down at a city. But you just see how tiny everything is, number one. So there's like that perspective. But I'm with you on the beauty thing. I've always felt more connected to God and nature. My big one was the first time I saw the Rockies and how, again, and I'm kind of with Mitch, and I spent most of my time in Texas and Oklahoma. So elevation was like, uh, there's a part of Dallas near that cemetery off I-30 where like you have some hills, that was elevation for us.
The funny thing is I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyone that's
Yeah.
gone on I-30 goes, "Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
those."
there's a bunch of antennas. It's called like Mountain Creek or something, but it's like, oh
Yes.
wow, I didn't know we had these down here. It's rather hilly. And by contrast, the Rockies like are violent. Like they come violently out of the ground and it's up and it's rough and it's jagged and it's lifeless above a certain elevation. It's breathtaking. And I got to take a work trip to Salt Lake City and coming west into the city. So you're coming out of the east, you're kind of already in the Rockies. But Salt Lake is in a valley. That's how the lake is there. And when you come out off the mountains looking down into the valley, it is just a crazy, crazy view. And I remember texting and like talking on the phone with Priscilla at the time because we were still dating, and I'm being like, I'm not Mormon, but I get it. If they came out of the mountains and they saw this and they were like, God wants us to live here,
This
I'd
is
have been,
it.
yeah. If I had been in the, I don't know, 1940s or whenever all that happened, but whenever that they came across the trail and they saw that, if someone had been standing next to me and said, "This is where God wants you to live," I think I probably would have been like, "Yeah, why would He not? This is crazy." Um, so I was right there with you, Mitch. When you started talking about high places and experiencing God and all of it, I was and still am overwhelmed every time I'm in nature and I get to kind of just see the beauty of the earth unfold beneath us. It's awe-inspiring and breathtaking. So when you talk about experiencing and climbing to reach God, I was right there with you. Is there a story that you had that you did not get to share that did not make the cut Sunday morning?
Well, I mean, I've done this several times, but I did not talk about the highest place that I've been is Mount Elbert in Colorado, which is the highest point in Colorado, which that's pretty cool. Going from some of the others that was on a wilderness trek.
Oh
We
man.
took the teens. I was a
Yeah.
intern for a church, and I'm a huge fan of wilderness trek and what it does. But it actually kind of led into it was some of the background thoughts of kind of where I turned that is some Christians want that nearness or closeness to God, but they don't want to leave base camp.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
on summit day, there were some of our teens that we had to convince, or not even just summit day, but just early on in the wilderness trek, you actually set up camp a couple times and just convincing them, "It'll be okay. We got you. We will help." Like, getting them to leave the camp was very difficult for a few of them, and, so, yeah, that was in the back of my mind preaching, but,
Yeah.
didn't make the cut, as it were.
So we'll use that as good a segue as we're going to get, because one of the first clips I pulled that stuck out with me was that just this idea that many Christians want to be closer to God, but they don't want to put in the work. And we're going to check and see if this is the one I think it
Probably will
is.
never summit Mount
Nope.
Everest. I believe that most Christians want to get
Yeah,
close
here
to
we go.
God. I think if you were to ask any Christian, anyone that claims to follow Christ, whether strictly or just nominally, I think you could ask them, do you want to be closer to God? And they would say yes. I think most Christians want to get closer to God. The problem is very few of us want to do the work to get there.
So I wanted to throw that out to you guys, and you can just pretend Mitch is not here. But I wanted to know how that hit you, if you agreed, disagreed, if that kind of lined up with your experience as he said that, and just kind of how that statement hit you, that idea that it takes work to leave base camp. We have to get out of our comfort zone. And yeah, I'll let y'all go first on how that just kind of hit you.
Well, I totally agree because, because really your goal is to have a relationship with God, and no relationship is easy. To have a good relationship. And so it takes both sides working really hard to make all
Yeah.
that work well. Obviously most minds go to marriage, that takes work,
Oh, yeah. True. True.
and I don't care if you're married to Don Keene, it takes work. Y'all y'all learned that he misbehaves sometimes. So
That was our illustration in class not all that long ago. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, but in that, it really made me think though. I had that thought, and then I was like, and who puts in more work than God on his side?
Yeah.
So why would you not be willing to do the work to have that kind of a relationship where he's literally just laying it all out for you? We think our side is hard, and it's nothing compared to what he did. So,
No, that's true. As you study the Old Testament, what you see is that the New Testament, in people's minds, a lot of times highlights the grace of God. The Old Testament highlights the wrath, the anger, the pillar of fire, all that jazz with God. But when you really study the Old Testament, what you learn is that God is actually even way more gracious than you
mhm,
thought.
mhm.
That whatever you thought his mercy and his grace was, you learn that, holy cow, these people are failing over and over and over. Speaking of holy cow, like
That's what that
sometimes
was a
there's
good
a holy
reference.
cow.
Oh dear.
So I don't do this very often, and certainly not in an ambushy kind of way as it might sound here. But that was one of those that I heard you, and I knew where you were coming from, and I think in general it's true. But a quote came to mind. For those who are familiar, Henry Nouwen is a Christian writer, has a lot of really good, like deep spirituality, reflective kind of books. A lot of his stuff is in that vein, I think. And something he commented one time is that when he reads theological discipleship books, what he finds himself writing a lot is yes, but how?
Mm.
And when a writer says something about, well, we all need to draw nearer to Jesus, he's like, yes, but how? Like, okay, I'm with you, but like how? And my kind of challenge to that statement was that I think there's plenty who want to be closer to God and maybe are willing to put in the work, but they just don't know how. Like they they know, okay, I need to read my Bible, I need to pray more, but they don't know where to begin. They don't know how to really understand and take in the Bible, or they don't know how to pray. I mean, how many people have you heard pray who pray? This was my first kind of resolution within ministry was I'm going to stop praying the same 5 prayers that I heard growing up, right? That we just, there's like a word bank of 7 phrases that we pull from, and that's how we pray. And when I first got into ministry, I said, you know what? I am just going to really try and pray like I'm talking to God and coming from the heart. And what that means is I'm going to flub over my words. I'm going to say things that sound dumb. I'm going to have long pauses, even though I'm up front on a stage, so to speak. But I was like, I'm just going to try and actually pray. But going through that taught me that I think a lot of people don't really know where to start when it comes to getting closer to God. So another one of the questions I kind of wanted to throw out to our crew here is, for the Christians who do want to put in the work, what does leaving base camp, to go back to your analogy, Mitch, that you kind of referenced again here, what does that look like? How can I just, as an average Christian on a random Tuesday, how can I start getting closer to God? How can I start the climb?
Did you want me to start?
Yeah.
So
I mean, we can throw it around.
no, so part of the answer to that, I mean, I laugh because my quick answer is, well, go listen to the rest of the sermon, because I address that in
That's true.
forms.
That's
Now,
true.
not to the level in which you're asking, and so that's fair, but I laugh because there are so many people that will comment on a sermon or comment on a lesson, and they'll comment in a way that I'm like, I don't think you and I heard the same sermon. Or, something to that effect. So it felt like that. So I'm kind of laughing.
No, that's a good
But
point.
no, you're right. I never mention in here about tips and tricks on praying. I just say pray bold.
Right.
And I give a little bit of what that means, but not like, okay, how to start or some of those things. And so, yeah, I think it's a very valid question. And it's one of those that we probably need to lean into more and sometimes just unpack slowly. Um, but I do think for those that want to leave base camp and have a deeper relationship with God, it's the understanding of there's not a cookie cutter system.
Yeah,
There's not,
true.
here's the perfect first step. I think the best first step is the one that you'll take, whatever that is. And so for some people it is, I got to, get into a daily Bible reading routine. For others, it is a prayer routine. Sometimes, so in our small group, we were just talking about our morning routine in the last
Yeah.
group that we have it. So some people it's going to be morning, some people it might be evening. That there's just something that you can tweak, that you can shift, that you can move, that draws you closer, one step closer to God. And I think I wish I had a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
But I've got ideas, but I think generally speaking, find what works for you, and if you need help, let us know.
Okay.
Now, Lauren and Carol, do you have like better
I think Lauren was
or more?
cooking up something at one point earlier.
No, well, kind of going back to what Terrance said, I feel like a lot of times we like to make it complicated. Like, well, I want to read my Bible, but I don't know where to read or what to
Right.
read or what, where should I start? And it's like, but when you think of it as if you'll just talk and learn, like you would, like in any relationship, like read your Bible just to learn more about God, just to see God
Hmm.
working, and not in the sense that, oh, I've got to read this certain, passage or this certain book.
I've got to get it right.
And like not even like, oh, I have to, kneel every night, at my bed and pray. And that's great. But like start talking to God like in your car, like, oh, you know what? Today's just beautiful, Lord. Thank you. Like, and I think just those small things start growing into that deeper relationship. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Carol, did you have something?
I think more,
Put
I
you on the
mean,
spot a little bit
really
if not,
along the
but
same lines. It's just that it is a process. It's not just a switch that you flip and all of a sudden you've got it all figured out. I mean, I've had lots of years to try to work on it, but I think a key for me, or where I'm at right now, is I have the ability to look back and see how he has worked before in my life. And I see, I mean, lots of ways he's done that. And I think that helps me to be looking for those things every day, not just in big moments, but in small moments. Um,
yeah.
so I just think that awareness, sometimes there's so much noise in the world we live in today, um, that it's hard to keep ourselves aware of God. And he's here all the time in everything we're doing, yet we don't necessarily um, tap into that and really think about
Yeah.
that. So that's something I've been like working on, and I'm not saying, because the noise gets loud a lot of times and it is hard. But sometimes if you can just breathe and step back, you'll go, oh, here he is. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I see
So
where we're headed and what's going on.
I have two things kind of in response to that. One is that hits upon we talk about like the still small voice of God,
Hmm.
which
Mhm.
is a reference to the story with Elijah, that the
Right.
Yeah.
fire comes through and the storm comes
Mhm.
through. And then the sound of silence. It's not that it's a whisper or a breeze. It's literally the Hebrew there is what the song came from, I think, is
Uh-huh.
it's that sound of silence, and that's where he hears God's voice. Related to that, I was talking to my eldest, who's a freshman at Harding this year. She's taking a Bible class that one of they're going through lots of different things of projects, and one of the projects that she is doing today is a 24-hour vow of silence.
Mm.
And the whole point of that
Out.
is to
Mm.
see how many times that you just flippantly use your words or any of
Ooh,
that, like
man.
Mhm.
to not speak. And so to give more credence into your words and understanding in that. And that's a cool step that our world, and if anyone knows JCC's just like me in this form, our life is words. And so like I can't imagine what she's going through today, but I'm glad she is
Mhm.
because that's a great step. Uh,
Man, you have talked about this before, and my mind kind of goes to, I would love to hear her thoughts on that afterward, and if that gave her perspective on her sister much. And I think about that. Well, no,
the
I'm serious,
connection
because
between the two. Yeah.
yeah, just because you've talked about
Mhm.
how I think when you were first describing your kids, she said Zoe is just like me, but without words, which is hard to imagine because I have a lot of them. But
Right.
you said personality, that's exactly who she is.
Yeah.
Man, that's fascinating. So one of the other points that I wanted to pull up was the bold prayers of Moses. And this is Exodus 32, 33, even a little bit into 34. But it's of the Old Testament. This has to be one of my favorite passages of Old Testament. It's where Moses is going before God. We have the back and forth between Moses, and you really hit on two quotes. And I didn't pull these, but I didn't pull the quotes from the sermon, but I am going to read the scripture. And the first one is from Exodus 33:15. And where he goes before God and he says, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. And I remember the first time reading that, it kind of short circuited my brain, because it flips both the request of the leaders of God's people and God's instruction to them, which is always follow my words, follow my steps, do not turn from the right for the left. We ask all the time for God to guide us, to direct us, to stay in front of us, to lead us. And this is the same principle, but the way it flips it is that no, don't take us anywhere that you're not going with us. And when I think about how we pray, which I guess was just really on my mind as I've thought about this sermon, we so often fall into like wish list prayer, or even sometimes, if we're in a different phase of life, just the airing of grievances prayers. God, fix this. God, take this away. Get this out of here. Fix this. I'm overwhelmed. And I'll be the first to say, when you're in a period of life of like deep grief or deep stress and being overwhelmed, pray overwhelmed. Right? That's what David does.
There's
pray
a place
overwhelmed.
for those prayers.
Yeah. Pray in doubt. Pray in seasons of struggle. But when our regular everyday, when the pattern of our prayers is only that, what would it look like to kind of flip that around and say, God, if you're not in this, do not take us there? If I think I've heard something, I have actually heard somebody pray, is that defeat us in our prayers, or defeat us in our desires and our plans if they're not your will. But just the way that Moses, maybe it's the ultimatum, maybe it's the way he structures his words, but just the idea that if you're not going with us, do not take us up from here.
Yeah, you can almost you can almost hear a little bit of agony in this, because of the tension of the relationship of what has just happened, and Moses knows what the people deserve, the judgment they deserve, but he also knows I think I said he's tasted the presence of God. Like he has tasted that, and he doesn't want to have anything but that. And so, yeah, I think that's it's bold, but it's also, whenever you've tasted it, it's hard not to turn back to that, to keep on going to that well.
And there's a contrast in some sense, and I'll pause for a second, because I've warned y'all that Rusty sometimes will not get a word in edgewise if we just go on. But it's a contrast with how the people have been acting the whole time, right through Exodus and then through the rest of Numbers, is no, we don't want to be here. We want to be over there. We want to be over there. We want to be in this part of we want to be back in slavery. We want to be, everything that God is doing is wrong to them. Just no matter which way God turns, they want to be doing the opposite. And for Moses to finally be the one to stand up and say, no, I don't care what happens here in the desert, here in the wilderness, but I'm not ready to go on to the next phase of whatever it is if you're not going with us, if you're not leading me. When we think about bold prayers, I guess we'll go to the second one. We'll go to Exodus 33:18. The second of his big prayers, he says, show me your glory. And this gets fulfilled in Exodus 34:6 in a second. And I do want to talk about that as well. But Mitch, you hit on this, of the idea of Moses prays for God's glory and God reveals his goodness. That God is the one who links those two together and pairs those two together. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit, to dive the tiniest bit into the Hebrew, because these are two pretty big Hebrew words if you're going to start doing any kind of deep word study or deep textual study in the Old Testament. And the first one for glory is kavod, and it means like weight. It is, I think, the biggest gloss. Would you agree with that, Mitch? That when in the Old Testament, like weight is the big one.
Yeah, I know that's
not God is
word.
Fat.
Well, but that same word is actually used of Eglon. That he is.
Right.
I mean,
heavy.
Eglon with Ehud the judge that sticks his knife in him, and the fat covers the whole blade. Like that same word is used there, but that's not what it's saying about God. What it's saying is the weightiness, the heaviness, the palatable presence. That I think is a good way to understand that word.
Yeah, like weightiness, majesty, unapproachability, and then goodness. For anyone who has seen a movie about a Jewish wedding, you will, if you've seen them break the plate and say Mazel Tov, Tov or Tav or Tov is goodness. It comes from goodness, and it is in the Old Testament. It is not quite to the degree of holiness, but it is a godly goodness. It's not like just this is great and this is neat, but it's morally upright. It's beautiful. It's glad.
I love it.
Okay, real quick. So
that
if
to
you're
our
not
viewers, yeah.
if you're not watching, we just had a lovely husband jump in on one of the cameras.
He's misbehaving
Not just any of
again.
them.
Misbehaving.
Misbehaving.
One of the
Don
elders in
Oh,
our
misbehaving.
church.
Sorry. So
This
that's why
needs
we
to become
cracked
a
up.
podcast segment. Don misbehaving.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That could be.
I could hear him coming, and I was like, no.
That
That's
was
all
funny.
good. It's all good.
No, hey, that is exactly the kind of goodness that is perfectly in line with what we were talking about. So I welcome that.
So let me ask this real fast, because I know both of you, both Lauren and Carol, were here whenever I did the series on Tove.
Oh.
Do you like?
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
I'm gonna go vulnerable here on this. Do you remember anything about that series?
Oh boy.
Yes, but not a
Did you
lot.
remember that I did it?
No, and I mean,
Remember
Did
it
anything
happened.
stick out? Like whenever he mentioned the word Tove, did it pull up some memories or anything?
so here's my problem. This happens when you get old. I know you did that sermon, but I also, probably because of your sermon, did some other studies on Tove. So I'm not really sure where,
Oh,
if
perfect.
I'm remembering your sermon or if I'm remembering, but
Fair
I think
enough.
one of the things that I felt like this definition you had left out that I thought was really important, especially like the creation. He saw it was good. That is, my understanding was that's referring to it's good in that it is designed for a specific purpose and it can fulfill its purpose.
Yeah.
Did you talk about
Man.
that? I don't know if
Yes.
you
And
tried.
so one of the
Okay,
things
see?
that I talked about is
Yeah.
that God is the only one that can define good, and he does it from the
Mhm.
very beginning. And how he defines good is not the same way that we, oh, that's,
Right.
that was a good job. It's about purpose. It's connected to completeness and perfection,
Mhm.
that it's doing its job. So yeah. Now
Yeah,
it could have been in other studies because I got that from my study as well. So we may have been studying the same things.
okay.
Lauren, did you remember something that
Yeah,
Not
she's about to.
necessarily anything specific, but
Yeah.
I do often think of that sermon series when I'm reading the Bible, and I come especially in the Old
Same.
Testament.
Mhm.
And you come across the good,
Right.
Yeah.
and yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is, for me, like as a preacher, I preach a lot of sermons. That has been one of these series that has been the most longevity impactful for me,
Mm.
is that I do the same thing. Whenever I'm looking over passages, I keep on seeing the goodness of God,
Mhm.
and I keep on, and Tov, it's right there.
Mhm.
And it's just been, it was neat. And so, yeah, I did not go into that in the sermon. I just referenced it briefly, but I didn't use the Hebrew. And I kind of wish I would have, to be honest, because I forgot that most people in the congregation have heard me talk, like that whole series was called, I used Tov in the series title. And so Tov was before, the Hebrew word was before congregation for 6 or 8 weeks that I went through that. So I should have, but thank you for bringing that up.
Boy, speaking of bold prayers, that is a bold request anytime a preacher gets to ask them. So it was like last year, maybe a couple years ago. Do you remember anything?
you
And Carol,
listening?
you gave the most complimentary response you can give, which is yes, and it made me go research it more.
Yes.
So
I don't know if you realize that, like,
yes.
woohoo!
Yeah, mission accomplished right there. If I gave you enough of something to make you want to go look at it on your own, I don't care if you don't remember a word I said. That's mission accomplished right there. So that's don't feel bad as that having that as an answer at all. I had a note in here that just on the note of bold prayers, I wanted Mitch. You and I talked about this before, and so I'll let you, I guess, lead Carol into this because I think y'all are more familiar with where we're going with this than I am. About the prayers for grandparents, prayers for grandkids.
Oh yeah. So as we're talking about bold prayers, and I look and see Carol as part of this. Was reminded that several, maybe a year,
2
2 years
2 springs ago?
ago,
Yeah.
her and Dawn taught a class, worked together on a class that was about praying over your grandchildren. And I wasn't in the class, but I heard a lot of things that seemed to be corollary to this idea of praying bold prayers. So,
Mhm.
Carol, like, what was that about? And even how does that tie in?
Well, it's funny because I mean, you did kinda let me know you were gonna talk about it, so I've been kinda had that in the back of my mind. Um, the purpose of the class, and it was focused kind of on grandkids, but it was really just any kid, child in our congregation, anybody in your, world that you feel needs prayer, which we all do. Um, it was about praying more specifically, and not just for the day or for the test or the whatever's going on in that child's life, but for those foundational things that they need to be a strong Christian, to grow up with a relationship with God, all of those things. Um, so there was just a real heavy focus on um, favor, God's favor, and love, and faith, and purity, and speech, and their conduct. I mean, there's and it's a thing that I still do every morning for my grandkids, and, you're praying specific scriptures over them each day or whenever you
Wow.
can, and it, just really has had an impact as far as I feel like I'm actually, mm, helping lay the foundation for their walk with God. So, now, the bold part of the prayer, it's kind of interesting because the more I thought about that as we were talking, a lot of because I've started, like, rewording those scriptures in my own words kind of, and
Hmm.
sometimes I feel like I'm telling God what to do, which feels very bold,
Very
because I'm
Moses
like
of you.
yeah, but I
That is
mean,
Show me your
bold.
glory. Yeah.
all of it a lot of it is, remind them of these things, fill them with, this, or
Yeah.
give them wisdom, or, so I do in some ways feel like I'm being a little demanding, but I think that's the boldness. That's the I'm gonna come to you and this is what I need and I want and what I want from my grandkids. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how I think it does kind of correlate with what Moses is doing here. I mean, because
So
he says, "Do not." I mean, that's a command. He's telling God, "Do not send us up there," and that feels a little funny, but you can see David I mean, there's a lot of prayers like that,
Yeah.
in the Bible,
David
so
was my first thought as well.
do what?
David was my first thought as well.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, he just that just happens, that
so let me ask you this, on any given day, whatever the subject, whatever the main framing of the prayer is,
Mhm.
do you find yourself throughout that day, uh, noticing, or at least more aware toward what you just like, if you prayed in the morning
Mhm.
for this specific
Uh-huh.
idea with your grandkids, and then you're
Mhm.
hanging out with your grandkids, do you notice that idea showing up?
Yeah, sometimes, it
No,
depends
I mean, yeah,
on
not
not
always.
every day,
Yeah.
but yes, and I mean, feel I do feel like God definitely gives me moments of, "Oh, there we go."
Yeah.
They'll do or say something and I'm like, "Yes, that's what I've been praying for." And it's not every day, and some days that is not what I was praying for at all. But
Yeah.
even that gives you the opportunity to have the conversation about, "Hey, this is what I've been praying for you," you know,
Yeah.
and giving them that opportunity to see how to do better and be better. So, yeah.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm thinking the two prayers of Moses that we focused on is the uh his presence and his glory. Then obviously his goodness. But like, if Moses is praying for that, then the case could be made that he's looking for it now.
Mm.
Like,
Right.
Lord, show me your
Right.
glory. Now I'm looking for it. If I prayed that every day in boldness, I'd be looking for it every
Mhm.
day in a little bit different way than my
Mhm.
normal approach.
Yeah, when he says, "Show me your glory," I don't think he meant just right now.
Yeah.
I think he meant open my eyes so I see it all the time. And I
Mm,
think that's what we really, and it might not be what he meant, but I think that's something to take with us, is that it's not just a one-time deal. It's an all the time deal that we should be looking
absolutely.
because he is showing it to us.
Yeah, yeah. You call it a directive for God, but really it's as much a request
Mhm,
for our eyes to be opened.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we have more things to talk about than we're going to have attention span for today. Mitch, I'll leave this to you because you know where we're going next week. So should we save the further discussion of God's nature? We can go to Exodus 34 and Matthew 17. And then I do want to eventually get to both of these, so we'll save one for next week. We'll do one now. And since you know where we're going, I'll let you pick.
Oh my word. Because I'm we're not necessarily hitting either of.
Either again? Well, then
Yeah, it's
we can just bring them up because they're left over
yeah.
then next week.
Either
Um,
that or let's just start with the Exodus 34 because you're on it.
we're on it.
We're right here, and so let's at least finish that, and then if we wanna do a brief Matthew 17, we sure could too. But start
Yeah,
with the
we'll have a
Exodus 34
conversation
and
with
let's
two
see where that
preachers,
goes.
and it'll be brief. Let's see. Um, so that's perfect because it pays off Moses' request, right? We've been talking about Moses' prayer, Moses' bold prayer, his request, show me your glory. Well, my understanding, and again, I'm far from the expert in the room, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is what he requests is what gets paid off in 34:6, is that God hides him in the cleft of the rock, so to speak, which I noted because it's not very often we have song lyrics that stick in our brains like that are only from one scripture, if you think about it. When I think of like the I'll fly away, well, I could point to a million passages of scripture that talk about going to heaven or up to heaven. When I read Exodus, I think of he hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, and there's nowhere else in scripture that happens. That's just from like this one tiny exchange, like this one detail in Exodus 34. So he hides Moses in the cleft of the rock, so to speak, and he passes by, and 34:6 says, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellious and sin, yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generation. And you could stop after the rebellion and sin part, but I left that second sentence in there because this gets handled later in the prophets. This gets discussed and dissected on what that means. And if I could throw out one more Hebrew word, I think if I was in a Sunday morning class, I would have put everybody to sleep with our Hebrew discussion already. But you can skip over us if you're bored of it, so it's okay. If I could throw out one more Hebrew word that I would encourage people studying the Old Testament to learn, it would be hesed or hesed. And the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. The faithful love, specifically this idea of this unending, unwavering. In the New Testament, you may be familiar with the word the agape love of God, the perfect and holy love that only comes from God. That hesed is a huge theme in the Old Testament. And when we think about, as Christians, the nature of God, and as 21st century readers, when we talk about the name of God and who he is, we often go back to the burning bush, which we talked about just last week, and where he says, I am who I am. Moses says, who should I say sent me? You should say that the great I am, or that I am who I am sent you. And we say the Lord's name is Yahweh, and there's probably this grammatical Hebrew thing going on. But I wonder, how would it change our view and our understanding of God? How would it change our theology if Exodus 34:6 became as you would say, Mitch, a filter verse for us? If that became a cornerstone text of how we view and understand God, how would your view of God change? Or the way you think about him change?
I you mentioned a lot there that the prophets unpack this, and I think that the Jews understood this as a filter verse. As
I
a
think
well,
so
maybe
too.
not a filter
Yeah,
verse, but like a filter
a big
idea,
one.
is that
Yes,
this is a place where God introduced himself. Like, you head back to Exodus 3, and he says, "I am who I am." And
right.
that's clearly a big idea, for Jews, and it should be for us as well, that I am, the name of God is huge. But
Yes.
then who is God? Well, the best way to understand who God is what he declares about himself. And this is one of those he's saying, this is Yahweh the Lord. I'm full of
Yeah.
compassion and mercy. I'm slow to anger. Like all these things there. The first half of this is very positive feeling. The second half is the negative side, as it were, but there's actually a blessing in the negative,
Yeah. Yep.
meaning that he will right wrongs. He will fix brokenness. Like that's good. We need God to
Right.
fix brokenness. So yeah, I think if we ran it through as a filter verse, as one of those places where uh you know someone has a feeling about God being angry, vindictive, and has his eye punishing me, waiting for me to do wrong. Um, Heading back to this verse kind of helps balance that view, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. You said a couple things I want to jump on, but I'll let some of our guests jump in here. Carol, you were kind of leaning in. I didn't know if you had something
Oh,
to say or you were just.
I didn't mean to. No, I really had thought it reminds me of the burning bush. It's like me saying, "Well, I'm Carol Keene," and what
Yeah.
that's it. But in Exodus, it's like he is expressing like his character, not just his name.
Mm,
And I
right.
mean, I do think sometimes if you just hear his name, it is that fear and that oh, he is the God, and so it's a different feeling when he starts describing his own character because it's so focused on love and faithfulness and all of these slow to anger, all of these things that are
Yeah.
so good and positive. So, I mean, I that's probably one of my favorite verses because I think and it's critical to study it and to know it, and we don't like we should, in my opinion. I mean, our kids should learn it. Just real quick, I'll do a little
Yeah.
commercial. Bible Project has a great series on this.
Oh,
It
okay.
focuses on the verse, and then it has a video on each one of the 5, like, hesed and the different
Yeah.
traits and uses.
Mm.
So, um, if anybody wants to know, like, dig into that a little more, that's a great
Yeah.
easy way to dig into it.
Yeah.
We
I'm all
love our
about
Bible
any plugs for.
project.
Exactly. I'm all
Yeah.
about plugs for the Bible Project. If I find that, I'll put it in our little show notes.
Okay.
And honestly, I might save selfishly, I might save it for later for a Bible class idea.
Mhm.
Um, Lauren, were you going to jump in there?
No.
No, she's okay. No, that's fine. Like I said, I don't want to.
When you called Carol out for leaning forward, she
I know, I was
immediately
like,
leaned back.
She said, "Nope." No, that's fine.
I was trying to read my notes is what was really happening.
Just trying to see the
No,
screen.
I do think it's interesting though that like y'all talk about the the burning bush because I think of that like when I think of God's
Yeah,
name, I am who
yeah.
I am. And I've read this passage, but I was like, "Oh, I didn't even remember
Mhm.
this." Like
Okay,
and
so
it's just funny
Uh-huh.
how that happens. Like you can read something
Mm.
over and over and then one day it gets pointed out or it hits differently.
Mhm.
well, then this is a perfect dichotomy because I think Lauren, you were probably right where I was when I kind of first. This was, and honestly, Carol, I think it was probably the Bible Project who, when I was reading or studying for some other lesson, pointed this out to me. And so I was where you were, Lauren, of the passage I heard all the time growing up when someone would say, when God says who he is the burning bush. His name is Yahweh. His name is I am who I am. Jesus in the Gospel of John, the I am statements, he builds on that. Before Abraham is, I was. So that was really core to my identity of God. And for those who are unfamiliar of this idea of a filter text, sometimes it's called a lens text or even like a cornerstone, keystone text. It's a passage by which you interpret the rest of the Bible. And we all have these. There's usually more than one. There's not necessarily just one, but these things that are kind of in our starred favorites, they're pinned for us. For I would say modern cultural Christianity, John 3:16 has to be a big one. That if people know anything about the Bible, if they know anything about God, they've heard people at least quote or mention John 3:16. And so whatever they know about God is kind of filtered through that. I can't tell you how many times I've encountered people just out and about who might not even be Christians who know John 3:16, right? Well, I the more I study this, the more I'm with you, Carol, and I agree with what you said, Mitch, that this was a major text for them. And the other one that comes to mind is Deuteronomy. I think it's 6:4, but it's the Shema.
Mhm.
Clearly,
Shema.
historical record says that was a huge one for them. But I think this is another one. And I love kind of diving into, well, we hold these verses as like really, really central to what we believe. And these are our go-to passages. And these are our penned verses and texts about God. And so I'm always intrigued when it seems like, well, actually, for most of Christianity or for most of God's people, there were some of these. And not necessarily just why didn't these make the cut? Why do we not read them enough? But how would it change our view if we did? And I think this absolutely should be. I would encourage people, if you haven't read it or studied it or to highlight it, look into the Hebrew words, go to the Bible Project or wherever. And even, Mitch, you highlighted that it's good to have a God who rights the wrongs. Not to recap the entire back third of the Old Testament, but that phrase of the punishing the children and the sins of the parents and what exactly that means is really what gets wrestled with and unpacked. And what we find is that even though he rights the wrongs, the children are not held guilty for the sin of their parents. But I think we would think of it as the sense that, like, well, if my parents sinned in certain ways, especially in Jewish culture, my life is going to be harder. But that does not mean that, as the Pharisees see with Jesus, that if someone is born blind, that it must be because their parents sinned. And so that's where the prophets wrestle with it, and Jesus really is this massive course correction to the Pharisees' understanding of this passage of what does it mean for God to be both gracious and just? What does it mean that he is slow to anger, but he does not leave the guilty unpunished? And I would just encourage anybody, if this is not already highlighted in your Bible, to highlight it, look at it, think about it, and maybe even find one of those studies that breaks it down verse by verse, because this is clearly something that when we look at the era Jesus walked into and we look at the Old Testament, that they went back to over and over, that this was central to their understanding of who God was. Well, since we've teased it a little bit and I kind of made you choose, Mitch, do you want to give us a little peek at what we've got on the horizon coming up for next Sunday?
So next Sunday is another motion posture toward holiness. We're going to be talking about kneeling in holiness.
Ooh, okay.
And so I'm going to focus mainly on the story in Daniel, because that one is, you got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who refused to kneel, and then you got you have Daniel who refuses not to kneel. Like, he's going to continue kneeling, and the repercussions of that and what that means. And so, yeah, we'll be in Daniel next week.
I'm excited. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Next Sunday is the time change for everybody out there. At the church we were at, the little small town church, that said, make sure to set your clocks back. And I was like, I don't think I've set a clock in 10 years. But for anyone whose phone is not their alarm, make sure you set your clock back. We got the time change. Next Sunday is also our baby blessing Sunday. Jane and I have some notes on how that's going to go. But if you have a baby that you want blessed, come on down, as Bob Barker would say. Actually, don't. Please come on down Wednesday. Don't come on down Sunday with no preparation or warning. Please tell us ahead of time. This is not an invitation to surprise us with your baby Sunday morning. Please tell us ahead of time so we can be blessed.
So, Carol, I expect you to bring your husband, who sometimes is a baby. No. So he can be, sorry.
Yes. You probably need to
that would be difficult, as I think he will be doing the blessing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think he will be part of the group laying on the hands. Be thinking about, just, I guess our listeners know, but our Ecuador missionaries that are overseas and over Sea Mountain and all sorts of things in between here and there. But they'll be coming back next Sunday. And for all our parents, teachers, and educators, we're almost to spring break. So that's exciting. I don't know, Lauren as a parent and Mitch as a parent, you might be less excited about the prospect of spring break.
I like it when school's out. I'm weird. I don't know if I'm weird or what. I like when she's home. So
Aww.
It's fun.
I don't know.
She's just saying
Maybe
that since
I would
recorded.
feel differently, though, if she was still like 5. So, there's probably a difference there. She's almost 16, but I've always enjoyed when school's out. So,
Well, I do want to say, Carol and Lauren, thank you guys so much for coming on and joining with us. We loved it. We'll have to go hunt Rusty down and see if he resents us next week or if he's going to come back. But we're glad you guys could join us. We appreciated your comments and for shedding some light on the ladies' ministry. And we thank everyone out there for listening to us. We hope you'll join us next week, and we'll see you on Sunday.